A strike by Chilean customs officials in 2013 caused a queue of lorries 20 kilometers or 12 miles long in Bolivia.
A queue is another name for a line of people. It's more common in the U.S. than it is here. In the U.S., however, we use the word queue when referring to computers, when referring to information that is being input into a computer to describe the order of the different things that are going in. And similarly, if it's, let's say, a hospital where there's a group of patients, the order of the patients might also be described as a queue. So there is a slight difference in U.S. terminology between a line and a queue. People imagine a line as being people lined up in a specific order, first come, first serve. But in the modern world, oftentimes, there is no real line. It's more of a metaphysical line of people from different sources being brought in a specific order. So in this sense, the word queue more accurately describes these circumstances where there is not an actual physical line. I was waiting in a queue to buy my groceries, and then another line opened up, and a bunch of people rushed over from behind me and got in the queue ahead of me, which I thought was real unfair. I remember when the first McDonald's opened up in Moscow, and people queued around the block to go buy their hamburgers. The day after Thanksgiving is commonly known as Black Friday because a lot of stores have things on sale, some of them very inexpensively. So people queue up for blocks and blocks to get into the stores to buy the inexpensive items.
In 2008, Siemens, a German conglomerate, was fingered for handing out bribes in emerging markets.
To finger means to identify someone, typically in some sort of sneaky or illicit way, or to accuse them of a crime. So oftentimes, criminal associates, one of them will get arrested or captured by the police, and then in exchange for a lesser sentence, they agree to finger or speak against other people in the organization. So they're said to finger that person, or to rat that person out, or to betray them. So you can imagine a police lineup where the suspects are behind this glass, and the witnesses, they look at each one and then they point their finger at the person who committed the crime. There was a burglary ring that got busted in my neighborhood a few months ago, and one of the burglars fingered all of the other burglars, got them thrown in jail, and then they didn't charge him with a crime at all because he did his public duty by testifying against his fellow criminals. They thought he was a rat, though. In a lot of neighborhoods, when somebody gets shot, nobody saw nothing. The police want to try to get somebody to finger the person who committed the crime, but people are oftentimes very reluctant to do so because there's a code of silence, for one, and also the people are afraid of getting murdered, which happens fairly frequently.
It has since spent a staggering $3 billion on fines and internal investigations to atone for its sins.
To atone means to say you're sorry for doing something wrong and to try to make up for doing the bad thing by doing something nice or something to pay back the people who the crime was committed against or who the offense was committed against. The idea of ATONE originally comes from just ATONE, which means that the person who committed the crime is of the same mind as the person who was the victim of the crime, where both sides agree that it was wrong to do that. So naturally, the person who did the bad thing should try to make up for it somehow, to atone for their doing bad. And this can also apply to milder things too. For example, if somebody insults somebody, or if they borrow something and they break it, they can also atone for that by saying they're sorry or by replacing the thing that they broke. As example, there was a former governor of the state of Alabama who was a segregationist during the 1950s and the early 60s, and he had a very famous line that he said, segregation now, segregation forever. And what happened was that the Supreme Court overruled him, and Alabama, as well as all the other southern states, they became unsegregated. And then a few years later, maybe 10 years later, that same governor, he ran for governor again. And he atoned for what he said before, and he just said he was very sorry that he said that, and that he would try to do better in the future. And he was reelected governor, and with a pretty decent percentage of the black vote, too. A number of months ago, Justin Bieber, he had this gigantic slingshot, and he was throwing water balloons all around his neighborhood, and apparently even caused some damage with some of them. This was a real high-tech water shooter. So he realized that he was wrong, and he said he was sorry, and he tried to atone for what he did, and his neighbors all forgave him. Most religions include atonement as one of the important things for people to do to make up for their sins or things that they do wrong. So the idea is that most people on a regular basis, they do things they shouldn't do, and so they should try to become better people, and part of that is to atone for things they've done wrong.
That's all for today. Tom Taylor is an ESL tutor. He teaches English in the United States and outside, all over the world, using Skype. He can be reached at his website, which is
ESL-fullsteamahead.com.
Click on this link and check out his website and email with questions. Thank you, Tom, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.